She vanished behind stone walls, and history never heard her scream. A young princess entered the Tower of London alive and left only as a question mark. Centuries later, her silence still echoes through British history. This is not a fairy tale. This is one of the darkest royal mysteries ever recorded. The story of the princess in the tower is a story of power, fear, and disappearance. It is a tale rooted in medieval England, where crowns were fragile and bloodlines dangerous. It begins in the late 15th century, during a time of political instability. England was ruled by the House of York, but the throne was never truly safe. At the center of this mystery stands a young royal girl, born into privilege but trapped by ambition. Her name was Princess Elizabeth of York. She was one of the daughters of King Edward IV of England. Her childhood should have been protected by luxury and courtly life. Instead, it was overshadowed by political betrayal. Elizabeth was born into a world where royal children were pawns. They were used to secure alliances and eliminate rivals. Love and innocence had little value in royal succession. When King Edward IV died suddenly in 1483, everything changed. England was thrown into uncertainty. The throne was meant to pass to Edward V. He was only 12 years old. Because of his age, a regent was needed. That regent became Richard, the Duke of Gloucester. Richard was Edward IV's younger brother. At first, he claimed to act as protector, but protection soon turned to imprisonment. Edward V was taken to the Tower of London. Officially, this was for his safety before coronation, but the Tower was not just a palace, it was also a prison. Soon after, Edward V's younger brother, Richard of Shrewsbury, joined him. They became known as the Princes in the Tower. Their sister, Princess Elizabeth, remained outside the Tower, but danger surrounded her as well. Richard of Gloucester made a shocking move. He declared that Edward IV's children were illegitimate. He claimed their parents' marriage was invalid. This legal argument stripped the children of their right to the throne. Richard then crowned himself King Richard III. The princes were never seen again. Their disappearance terrified the nation. Rumors spread quickly. Many believed the boys were murdered. But what happened to their sister was no less dangerous. Elizabeth of York became the next threat. As the eldest surviving daughter, she held a powerful claim. If she married the right man, she could unite England. That made her extremely dangerous to Richard III. Some historical accounts suggest Elizabeth was also confined. While not always mentioned, evidence points to her being held under surveillance. The Tower of London remained central to her story. Royal women were often kept hidden rather than killed. Their value lay in marriage, but silence was still a form of imprisonment. Elizabeth Swidbury feared for her daughter's life. She took refuge in Westminster Abbey with her other daughters. Sanctuary was one of the few protections women had, but sanctuary could not last forever. Richard III pressured Elizabeth Swidbury relentlessly. Eventually, an agreement was made. Elizabeth of York was released from sanctuary. She returned to court under Richard's control. This moment marked her most dangerous phase. Rumors emerged that Richard intended to marry his niece. This marriage would strengthen his claim. It would also remove Elizabeth as a rival. The idea horrified the public. Even in medieval England, this was taboo. Whether the plan was real or propaganda remains debated. But the danger to Elizabeth was undeniable. She lived under constant threat. Every move was watched. Every word carried risk. The Tower of London loomed as a symbol of royal erasure. Those who entered often vanished from history. For Elizabeth, survival depended on political change. That change came from across the sea. Henry Tudor, a distant Lancastrian claimant, prepared to invade England. Elizabeth became central to his plan. He promised to marry her if he took the throne. This marriage would unite York and Lancaster. It would end decades of civil war, known as the Wars of the Roses. Elizabeth's life now represented hope. Richard III knew this. He attempted to neutralize her influence, but time was running out. In 1485, Henry Tudor landed in England. The two armies met at the Battle of Bosworth Field. Richard III was killed in battle. His death changed everything. Henry Tudor became king. Henry VII became queen. Elizabeth of York survived. She was no longer a prisoner. She became a queen. Her marriage to Henry VII united the realm, but questions never faded. What did Elizabeth know about her brothers? Were they already dead when she married Henry VII, or had they vanished while she was under watch? The Tower kept its secrets. No official confession ever surfaced. No bodies were produced at the time. Centuries later, skeletal remains were found in the tower. They were believed to be those of the princes, but no DNA confirmation exists to this day. Elizabeth never spoke publicly about their fate. Silence protected her crown, but silence also deepened the mystery. Historians debate whether she was a victim or survivor. Some argue she narrowly escaped the same fate. Others believe she was used as a political tool. Either way, her life was shaped by fear. The Tower defined her childhood. It defined her family's destruction. And it defined one of history's greatest unanswered questions. The disappearance of the royal children did not end with Richard III's death. In many ways, it only became more complicated. Henry VII now ruled England, but the Tower's silence remained intact. No official investigation was ever launched into the fate of the missing royals. This omission troubled both contemporaries and historians. If the princes were alive, they were a threat. If they were dead, someone was responsible. Yet Henry chose silence. Elizabeth of York also remained silent. As queen, her words carried enormous power, but she never publicly addressed her brother's fate. This silence has fueled centuries of speculation. One theory suggests the princes were murdered on Richard III's orders. This is the most popular explanation. Richard had the strongest motive. The boys threatened his claim to the throne. Eliminating them would secure his reign. Sir James Tyrrell is often named as the executioner. According to later accounts, he confessed to the murders. However, no original confession document survives. The story comes from second-hand Tudor sources. This raises questions about reliability. Another theory suggests Henry VII ordered their deaths. This idea is more controversial. Henry's claim to the throne was weak. If the princes were alive, his rule was unstable. Killing them would remove doubt forever. But this would mean the murders happened after Bosworth. There is no solid evidence for this timing. Still, Henry benefited from their disappearance. A third theory argues the princes escaped. This theory fuels legends and impostors.
Perkin Warbeck famously claimed to be Richard of Shrewsbury. He gained significant support across Europe. Some foreign courts treated him as legitimate. Elizabeth of York met Warbeck. She did not publicly confirm his identity. She did not publicly deny it either. Her silence remains haunting. Eventually, Warbeck was captured and executed. His death closed one door but opened many questions. In 1674, builders at the tower made a discovery. They found a wooden box beneath a staircase. Inside were two small skeletons. They were believed to be the princes. King Charles II ordered them reburied in Westminster Abbey. No forensic examination was conducted at the time. Centuries later, scientists requested DNA testing. Permission was denied. The mystery remained untouched. Modern historians are divided. Some defend Richard III's innocence. They argued Tudor propaganda vilified him. Shakespeare's portrayal influenced public opinion. Others believe Richard acted ruthlessly. The truth may never be fully known. Elizabeth of York lived a quiet queenship. She focused on motherhood and stability. She gave birth to future King Henry VIII. Her role was to heal a broken nation. Reopening old wounds risked civil war. Silence was survival. Silence was strategy. Her death in 1503 ended any chance of testimony. The tower still stands today. Visitors walk its halls in silence. They hear whispers of lost children. History remembers the princes, but it forgets the princess who survived. She carried the weight of unanswered truth. She wore a crown built on absence. The mystery endures because silence endures. The princess in the tower was not just imprisoned by walls, she was imprisoned by history itself.
As centuries passed, the mystery refused to fade. Instead, it evolved with new evidence and new questions. Historians began to re-examine old sources more critically. They questioned who wrote the history and why. Most early accounts came from Tudor writers. The Tudors had a political motive to demonize Richard III. Portraying him as a child murderer strengthened their legitimacy. This casts doubt on many traditional narratives. Sir Thomas More's writings played a key role. He described the prince's murder in vivid detail, but he was a child at the time of their disappearance. His account relied on hearsay. William Shakespeare later amplified this image. His Richard III was a villain shaped for drama. The play cemented public perception for generations. Yet Shakespeare wrote under Tudor rule. Art and politics blended into propaganda. Modern historians now separate literature from evidence. They examine financial records, letters, and court documents. One striking fact remains: no payment records exist for murder. Medieval assassinations usually left financial traces. None have been found for the princes. This absence complicates the Richard III theory. Another question concerns opportunity. Richard was frequently away from London. He did not reside constantly at the tower. Control was delegated to trusted men. This widens the list of suspects. Henry VIII's behavior after taking the throne is also suspicious. He delayed marrying Elizabeth of York. This delay weakened her independent claim. Only after securing his position did he marry her. This suggests calculated strategy. Henry also imprisoned Elizabeth's relatives.
The Yorkist threat was systematically removed, yet Henry never produced the princes. Alive or dead, their fate remained hidden. In the 20th century, archaeology entered the debate. The tower skeletons became central again. In 1933, the remains were examined briefly. The analysis was limited by technology. The boons were consistent with children, but age estimation was uncertain. No cause of death was established. No definitive identification was possible. Calls for DNA testing increased. Modern science could compare royal DNA. The British monarchy controls access. Permission has not been granted. This refusal fuels suspicion. Some argue it protects royal dignity. Others believe it protects uncomfortable truths. Elizabeth of York remains a silent witness. Her personal letters reveal little. She was cautious with words. Survival taught her restraint. As queen, she embodied unity. Revealing the past risked chaos. Her children symbolized the future. Digging into death endangered peace. Thus, silence became legacy. The tower remains unchanged. Its stones absorb footsteps and whispers. Visitors sense unease without knowing why. History lingers where truth is buried. The princess in the tower survives through absence. Her story is not about death alone. It is about power controlling memory, and memory deciding truth.
Every historical mystery eventually reaches a point where evidence ends and interpretation begins. The princess in the tower stands exactly at that edge. No confession survives. No document closes the case. Only silence remains. This silence has allowed multiple final theories to coexist. One final theory suggests political convenience erased the truth. Both Richard III and Henry VII benefited from uncertainty. Uncertainty protected power. Certainty invites accountability. In medieval politics, unanswered questions were safer than answers. Another interpretation focuses on gender. History fixated on the missing princes. The princess was sidelined, yet she lived. She adapted. She survived the tower's shadow. Her survival required silence. Speaking could undo peace. As Queen, Elizabeth of York represented unity. Her marriage healed civil war. Her children secured succession. Her voice threatened stability. Thus, her silence became political duty. Modern historians increasingly view her as a strategist, not passive, not ignorant, but restrained. The tower's symbol itself evolved. It became more than a prison. It became a symbol of erased truth. Those who entered vanished from records. Those who survived vanished from narrative. The tower kept secrets not by force alone, but by time. Memory faded, records decayed, witnesses died. The mystery endured. Contemporary historians ask a different question now. Not who killed the princes, but why was silence preserved? Power writes history. Survivors live with it. Elizabeth of York lived long enough to understand this. She never reopened the wound. She never named the dead. She never accused the living. Her restraint built a dynasty. The Tudor line ruled for generations. England stabilized. Peace followed bloodshed. But truth paid the price. The skeletons beneath the tower remain symbolic. Bones without names. Children without voices. History without closure. Scientific truth remains possible. DNA could answer centuries of doubt, yet permission remains denied. The refusal speaks louder than words. Some mysteries survive because they are useful. Others survive because they are dangerous. This one may be both. The princess in the tower represents historical survival. She escaped death, but not consequence. She lived, but carried absence. Her life reminds us that survival is not freedom, it is endurance. Her silence echoes louder than screams. Her crown was forged in unanswered questions. History remembers the tower, but it forgets the girl who walked away from it. Perhaps that is the final cruelty. Not death, but erasure. The tower still casts its shadow. Visitors feel it without knowing why. Stone remembers what paper forgets, and silence remains history's most loyal guardian.
History often pretends to speak clearly. In reality, it whispers. Sometimes it stays silent on purpose. The story of the princess in the tower exists inside that silence. She's remembered not for what she said, but for what she never could. She lived in an age where survival required forgetting. Memory was dangerous. Truth was negotiable. Power decided which stories deserved air. Elizabeth of York learned this early. Her childhood taught her loss. Her marriage taught her compromise. Her crown taught her restraint. She became queen without demanding justice. She became a symbol without demanding explanation. Her life was a bridge between two violent houses, between past bloodshed and future stability. Bridges do not speak, they endure. The tower remains standing. Its stones are cold. Its walls are thick. Visitors feel unease without knowing why. That unease is inherited memory. It is history pressing back. The princes remain lost. Their names echo through textbooks. Their sister fades between footnotes. Yet she lived the longest with the consequences. She carried unanswered questions into motherhood. She buried silence inside dynasty. Her children ruled a nation shaped by her restraint. England remembers Tudor glory. It forgets Yorkish grief. Perhaps that is the final lesson. History rewards peace, not truth. The princess in the tower escaped death, but she did not escape history's shadow, and that shadow still stretches across centuries. Historical timeline: The Princess in the Tower. 1466. Elizabeth of York is born at Westminster Palace. She is the eldest daughter of King Edward IV. Her birth secures Yorkist hopes. 1471. Edward IV regains the throne after civil war. Elizabeth grows up as a royal princess. Her future seems secure. 1483. King Edward IV dies suddenly. Power fractures instantly. Edward V is proclaimed king. He is only 12 years old. Elizabeth's world collapses. 1483. Edward V and his brother, Richard, are taken to the Tower of London. The tower is described as temporary residence. They are never seen again. 1483. Richard, the Duke of Gloucester, seizes the throne. He becomes King Richard III. Elizabeth of York is declared illegitimate. Her royal status is erased. 1485. Richard III dies at the Battle of Bosworth Field. Henry Tudor becomes King Henry VII. A new dynasty begins. 1486. Elizabeth of York marries Henry VII. The War of the Roses officially ends. York and Lancaster unite. 1486 to 1502. Elizabeth gives birth to multiple children. The Tudor line strengthens. Political stability returns. 1502. Prince Arthur dies. Elizabeth loses her eldest son. The cycle of loss continues. 1503. Elizabeth of York dies after childbirth. She is 37 years old. She is buried in Westminster Abbey. Her silence becomes permanent. 1674. Bones believed to be the prince's are discovered in the Tower. They are placed in Westminster Abbey. No confirmation is made. 1933. The bones are examined. Results are inconclusive. The mystery deepens. 21st century. DNA testing is proposed. Permission is denied. The case remains closed by authority. History stays unresolved.